because she was making a mockery of the system, turning justice into a game where she controlled all the pieces. He had spent years in courtrooms like this, watching men like Tyrone Wills get steamrolled by a system designed to bury them. But this time it was different. This time, Darnell wasn't just here to defend his client. He was here to expose something bigger. He took a slow breath, steadying himself, and then spoke. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I move for a mistrial." Judge Langford scoffed, barely looking up from her papers. "Denied," she said flatly. Darnell expected that. He wasn't done. "Then let the record reflect that the defense is making a formal complaint about judicial misconduct." The room went silent. For the first time in years, Judge Langford hesitated. Her fingers gripped the edge of the bench, just a little tighter. "You are dangerously close to contempt, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice lower now, almost a growl. Darnell took a step forward, voice unwavering. "And you, Your Honor, are dangerously close to a federal investigation." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The jury, the gallery, even the court clerk stopped typing. Judge Langford's face barely changed, but Darnell saw it. The flicker of doubt. The split-second calculation running through her mind. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She was the judge. The final word. The untouchable. Not today. Darnell turned to the back of the room. A man in a suit, Department of Justice, stood against the wall, arms folded. Watching. Waiting. And then, the doors swung open. Two uniformed officers stepped in. Judge Meredith Langford, one of them said, his voice firm. "You're under arrest for obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and judicial misconduct." For the first time in 24 years, Judge Langford had no words. Win a case, he was here to unravel something much bigger. He adjusted his tie, exhaling quietly, his mind already several steps ahead. Judge Langford had built her power on fear, on intimidation, on the silent understanding that no one dared to challenge her authority. But today, that silence was cracking, and Darnell was holding the hammer. The jury shifted again, a few of them glancing at each other. The tension in the courtroom wasn't just discomfort now, it was doubt. And doubt, in a case like this, was everything. Langford could feel it too. She clenched her jaw, gripping the edge of her bench like she was trying to hold the trial together by sheer force of will. She wasn't succeeding. Darnell leaned in slightly, just enough for Tyrone Wills to hear him. "Stay ready," he murmured. His client nodded, his fingers still clenched into fists beneath the table. Philip Calloway cleared his throat again, trying to regain his footing. "The state calls Detective Harris to the stand." Darnell didn't move, but inside, he was already preparing. Harris was the lead investigator, the one who had built this case from the ground up. And if Darnell was right, he was about to be the prosecution's biggest liability. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 40s stepped up, his badge glinting under the courtroom lights as he took his seat. He adjusted his tie, glancing at Judge Langford as if looking for reassurance. That was another mistake. "Detective Harris," Calloway began, "can you confirm that the defendant's fingerprints were found at the scene of the robbery?" Harris nodded. "Yes, they were." Darnell waited. 1, 2, 3 seconds. Then he stood. "Objection, Your Honor." His voice was steady. "The defense has not received any forensic reports confirming the presence of my client's fingerprints. If such evidence exists, it was withheld from discovery, which, again, is a direct violation of Brady versus Maryland." A fresh ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. The court reporter's fingers flew across the keyboard. Judge Langford's nostrils flared. "Mr. Hayes, I have already ruled on this matter." "Then, Your Honor," Darnell interrupted, his voice never rising but cutting through the air like a blade, "the defense is formally requesting that all forensic evidence be submitted for independent review." Langford's fingers tightened around her gavel. "You do not dictate how evidence is handled in my courtroom." "No, Your Honor," Darnell said, tilting his head slightly. "But federal law does." The room was dead silent. Even Calloway looked uneasy now. He shot a quick glance at Harris, whose expression had tightened just slightly. Darnell pressed forward. "Detective Harris," he said, turning to the witness stand. "Can you confirm, under oath, that the forensic report you're referring to was reviewed by an independent analyst? Harris hesitated. Darnell took a slow step closer. Detective, I'll ask again. Are you certain that my client's fingerprints were found at the crime scene? Langford cut in. Move on, Mr. Hayes. But Harris was already shifting in his seat, his discomfort obvious. Darnell ignored the judge this time. Detective, he said, his voice dropping just slightly, are you willing to testify, under oath, that you personally saw the forensic report? Harris licked his lips. His hands gripped the armrests of the witness chair. Langford slammed her gavel. Enough, she barked. Move on, Mr. Hayes, or I will hold you in contempt. Darnell turned slowly, locking eyes with her. For asking a state witness to confirm the evidence he swore under oath to provide? His tone was calm, but the weight behind it was crushing. Langford's face darkened. I've warned you, Mr. Hayes. And I've warned you, Your Honor, Darnell countered, stepping back toward the defense table. He placed both hands on the polished wood, his next words slow and deliberate. The defense is filing an official motion to dismiss this case on the grounds of prosecutorial misconduct and judicial bias. The gallery erupted. Reporters whispered furiously, pens scratching against paper. Even the jury was fully alert now, some leaning forward as if they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Langford slammed the gavel again. Order. There will be order in this court. But the order she had wielded for 24 years was gone. Darnell had done what no one else had dared to do. He had shattered the illusion. He had forced the courtroom to see what had been hiding in plain sight. And as the doors to the back of the room opened once more, revealing two high-ranking federal agents, he knew one thing for certain. Judge Meredith Langford had just lost control of more than her courtroom.